Hey YouTube, it's been a while. I wanted to give you guys because this is a viewer requested thing, and I haven't done one of these in a while. I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a guide on how I make my decisions with my side deck and how I like to side in and out for matchups. Um, so, for the record, this is the same build as last time. Um, that I did my last video on. You can ignore these last few. I would just use more copies of these and some random blank exceeds. This was back in the day from when I was setting Super Poly, and I've been too lazy to change it because really only, what, two Geyserists, like one Heroclnos, one Stardust, and at most two Chimera Tech are like ever coming out of the extra onto the field. So yeah, the rest of it doesn't really matter. Um, okay, so um, regarding the side deck. Okay, so regarding the side deck, um, the side deck was mainly built around the worst matchups the deck has. Because the good matchups this deck tends to steamroll its good matchups. I think most of you probably know this already with GBs, but when a GBs has a really good matchup against the deck, it's like not just a good matchup; it's normally a really, really good matchup. So it lets you really laser focus in my opinion, into the bad matchups when it comes to your side deck and prepping for them. And usually, once you prep for your bad matchups, there's usually some cards in your side that you just happen to also work into some of the other matchups anyways. Um, so, what do I have here first? So, this is for Blackwings. So, what I like to do is I like to map it out into different dueling book tabs. So if you look in my dueling book, I have like Edison side, Vayu Turbo, blah, 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 GB's Blackwings, all stuff like that. So for example, like this is the Blackwing one. So what I like to do is helps me map it out in my head better. Is I take all the stuff from my main deck, put it up here, all the stuff coming in from my side deck, put it down here. This just helps me, again, plan my side deck better, and it allows me to see holes in my side deck when I map it all out like this. And then, obviously, it gives me an easy tool that I can just like memorize my side deck before the tournament, like my side plans. So this is Blackwings. So the reason behind my choices here, so we want to side in a second Hoplomus because I already have a second Hoplomus on my side. It's really good in this deck. When I do that, I want to take out a GB because I don't want to flood my deck with too many monsters. The best option is one of the two Retiaris. We still have one. Retiari tends not to be as important in the Black matchup. It's good for, maybe like the one of Vayu normally Blackwings plays, and then also like every now and then getting rid of some Blizzard targets. But putting Retiari on the field constantly is a little risky in that matchup because it's a very low stat considering the average stats of their creatures is all 1300 and above. You normally want to at least be able to put a creature on the field that would force them to collude you. So just giving them like a freebie that you need to like defend sometimes really sucks. So Retiari isn't always the best play into that matchup. Hoplomus is a much stronger card. But it's still good enough obviously to have one into Retiari. Now, DD Warrior Lady, I side deck the one DD Warrior Lady. I think it's a really solid in this matchup, especially after they see double Hoplomus. They are going to try to swing for more than 21 when hitting into a face down. That's when you can very much throw them off with the DD Warrior Lady. Also, it's another card that keeps a card out of the graveyard. It's a great card to attack with. It's a great card to just be able to set. It's just a really, in this matchup, 1-for-1 removal is really good, especially banish removal to keep them off Dark Arm Dragon and to keep their grave light when it comes to Blizzard. So I really like DD Warrior Lady. I did mention the thing, though, about monsters. I don't like to add too many monsters in my deck post-side because it messes up with my average like hand counts, like monsters and spell and traps. So anytime I side in DD Warrior Lady or Executor, I mentioned in my last video, I side out Yada. The reason for that is with Yada, this is like effectively a 40 card deck plus Yada, because the card replaces itself by drawing one. But without Yada, it's very much a 41 card deck. So instead of running a 40 card deck with, you know, this many normal summons, now it gets to run a 41 card deck with one more normal summon. So like the ratios feel better to me, the hands feel smoother. It's something that I like to do. So it's just for mathematical purposes for the most part for me, and it makes me feel comfortable. Out of the side, I think the best other options, Triple Trap Hole. This is in my side targeted for Blackwings. The reason Triple Trap Hole is there is for Blackwings. So they are all being brought in. It is, compared to everything else that's already in the main deck, it's probably the best card that I think that you could be side decking for Blackwings. There's obviously, you know, things like Consecrated Light, stuff like that that exists, but I really think what you want to do with GBs is you win by minimizing the game state, not by putting something that's trying to lock your opponent into weird plays and then winning the game through there. You want to minimize the board. So things that go 1 for 1 and prevent your opponent from going +1 are good for you. So Black Trap Hole is great. Blackwings is an oppression deck, also sometimes side skill drain, so we're siding in the Twister, obviously. Smash and Ground is just solid into Blackwings, so we're going to side it. And so is Cyber Dragon. Obviously, it can get oppressioned, but the one Cyber Dragon is fine. It runs over their entire deck. You just have to be really careful if you're going to Cyber Dragon, try to run into a Bora, because you could get colluded. You're a little less worried about collude versus anything else, though. So the side outs. Side outs, we're siding out Shrink. It's good into Bottomless, but I really don't like it into the rest of the deck. Because Collude exists, and Shrink loses to Collude 100% of the time, because Shrink doesn't work during damage calc. Also, Shrink only works on the original attack. One Chariot. So I like to go to one Chariot in this matchup, so I side out the second one. This matchup tends to come to having a lot of live cards all the time, and a lot of their plays that they do on Blackwings don't require the monster effects until after your GBs are off the field, like Shura running over your guy or something. Or their creatures are just big enough to just do it. So I really like having just the one Chariot. It's definitely a good enough card to have, but I don't like overdrawing it, or God forbid, I don't like drawing 2 of it. So it's just not going to be there. One Compulse. As a reminder, I main deck 2, so I side out 1. Again, this card isn't like amazing into Blackwings, but it does enough. It being able to protect your own guys, you being able to use it onto a random Blizzard Synchro, it definitely has useful applications. So enough to where I think that I would never want to draw 2 copies of this card against Blackwings, so that's why I pull out 1, but 1 is fine. Call of the Haunted, that gets pulled out because this is an oppression deck. I'd rather, like, especially since I'm siding in Cyber Dragon, I'd rather pull out 1 more card that's dead against oppression. And then Call of Haunted also leaves, like, when you Call of Haunted and then tag out a GB, it leaves an extra card on the field and makes it easier for Icarus to be live. I don't like that either, because I like to play around Icarus. And Trap Dust Shoot. Trap Dust Shoot I pull out because I tend to find against Blackwings, with the amount of back rows the deck has, it pretty effectively plays around Dust Shoot most games. Most games I feel like by turn 2, it's gone down to 3 cards in hand and sits at 3 cards in hand or less for most of the rest of the game if I'm playing right and we're having a pretty interactive game. So any deck that I feel like with after the first turn goes to under 4 cards or goes to isn't going to draw to 4 cards in hand on their next turn, I don't like having Dust Shoot against that deck game 2 and 3, so I opt to bring it out. Okay, so this next one, I believe this next one is an example versus Dragon Turbo. I don't know what people's opinions in general are on GBs versus Dragon Turbo. I overall like the matchup for us, but it's tricky because obviously they can just kill you, right? I drastically think this card, Secutor, very much changes the outcome of the matchup for you, and you just want to bring it in because Dragon Turbo doesn't play real defensive back row. They might side in like the one Mirror Force, one Torrential. Again, you still have MST Dust. You have more of those, and they have Mirror Force Torrential, and most of their back rows tend to be blanks. If you just slam a Secutor in their face the very first turn you get a chance and make a Herc, they've lost the game. That's usually how that works. So, besides that, Pulse feels pretty bad against them. It feels very horrible against Red Eyes. And it's not like you're trying to protect your guys from a lot of traps. So we're setting in another Chariot. I will Chariot a Whitestone activation all the time to try to brick their hand. Like, fuck that, I'm going to try to brick their hands as hard as I can. In pole position, I like this because of all the true nades they have. I can potentially kill a guy and heavy storm and stuff, but also they tend to side one or two lightning vortexes alongside brain control and stuff to clear out your board, especially playing GBs because they want to turn off Chariot, and this gets around that. So I really like this card. In general, though, I think the matchup's positive, but you have to be very careful in playing it, and this card will carry the matchup when you bring it in. So if you don't win game 1, this card will very much carry game 2 and 3s, because making Heroclonos just kills the deck. So this one is for Herobeat. Now, so I know Herobeat is on the downswing. It's not the most popular deck right now. However, it's probably GB's hardest matchup in all of Edison. Much harder than Blackwings. So you definitely want to have a side plan for the deck because the deck will still see play. If you notice, a lot of my side-ins are pretty similar to Blackwings, and it's because they're a similar-ish deck in the way of their back row deck, and a lot of that are with 1900 2K monsters, 1800 monsters. So that stat line and it being a back row deck means a lot of my sides similar. So if you notice the Cyber Dragon, the DD Warrior Lady, the Hoplomus, the Smashing, the Twister, it's an oppression deck. It can be both in a skill drain and an oppression deck. So all 5 of those are good for basically the exact same reasons they're good against Blackwings. What I also side against them, Transmigration Prophecy. I love this card. I think this card is highly underrated. The fact that it's able to get rid of 2 cards very much can determine whether a Miracle Fusion is live or not. This card being able to chain to Miracle Fusion to potentially just turn it off is huge. Also, it can, just like Crow, you can chain it to Hero Blast. And if they can't bring back the monster that they target with Hero Blast, they can't kill your GB. So, very good card. I like the card a lot. I think it's worth it just for those interactions, especially since it tends to be a deck that has very few cards in grave total. And especially with GBs having Retiari, it's very easy to keep them on minimal Miracle Fusion targets in grave because they already don't play many. So I think it's pretty easy to mess them up with this card. Third Compulse. We bring in the third Compulse because I think we all know Compulse is amazing in this matchup. Obviously, it's good into Absolute Zero, or if they're playing the Diva build, it's good into a Diva Synchro target. Really, the reason this card is good, though, is because you can, the same reason Pole Position's good, is when they spark your GB, you chain Compulse on it, it saves the GB, and they don't draw a card, because the card didn't die. So that ends up being huge card advantage-wise for you, versus Gemini Spark is normally a card that's great at plussing them. You let Gemini Spark go negative on them. So I really think 3 Compulse plus the 1 Pole Position is very huge into the matchup and definitely worthwhile. And Pole Position, again, is for the same reason. It has some other random niche applications. It stops Brain Control, Mind Control if they play it. It can, in a very rare situation, stop a Miracle Fusion if they have an Alias on the board, and Alias is the strongest monster on the field, and there's no heroes in the grave, but there's waters in the grave, and they activate Miracle Fusion. You could chain Pole Position And Miracle Fusion fizzles because their only legal target to use as the hero part of the fusion can't can't be used because it's unaffected by spells. So there's like a very niche situations for Miracle Fusion, but it's really for the Gemini Spark and everything else. Um, so same reason. Retiari, the second Retiari is the most flexible card for me to side out for Hoplomus. I do like Retiari all in all into this matchup, but I do want to take out a GB when siding in the Hoplomus. Retiari is the most flexible one to take out, so we're taking out one. Also, we probably, if we really have the luxury to tag into 2 Retiaris against them, we're probably in a winning state of the game versus this deck anyways. One Test Tiger. So I'm pulling out one Test Tiger. There's a couple of reasons. Again, this is an oppression deck, but as you see, I didn't do this against Blackwings. The difference is this deck can Gemini Spark your GB on Tiger's effect to like very much go plus on you, which doesn't feel good. Blackwings you can play around that because Blackwings you can go summon GB Tiger priority, and now you only have one target for Icarus attack, and they can't blow you out the same way that a Hero Blast or a Gemini Spark can. So Tiger is still good. You still want it. You're also still playing Rescue Cat. And I always think you do want Tiger targets for Rescue Cat. But you pull one out because you're not trying to like overdraw a bunch of Tigers. We're pulling out Shrink for the same reason as against Blackwings. It's not good into Honest. It'll always lose to Honest. We're pulling out one Chariot for basically the same reason as Blackwings. Their stats are more important in this matchup than their effects. So you really have to deal with their stats first, and then every now and then the effect is like somewhat relevant. Like it's relevant every now and then, negate of Honest. Or if you need out an absolute 0, it's sometimes relevant to be able to chariot the effect so you don't lose the guy. Dust Shoot, even more so than Blackwings, this is very much a like set a bunch of back row deck. After the very first turn, Dust Shoot's probably dead. Yada for the same reason, because I'm bringing in DD Warrior Lady. I like to offset my monster account. Starlight Road. This one I think is interesting, but my reason for this is that I think you want a lot of live cards in this matchup. There's a lot of times when you go to set road plus something else, the something else you have to use in an interaction like a Deep Prison, and they just Gemini Spark the face down road. The road just feels like the biggest Gemini Spark bait like all the time. But like not in a good way, because I'm going negative. Like sure I got to the Medusa Gemini Spark, but like they went positive in the interaction normally. So it just doesn't feel good. And when it comes to Starlight Road, I really feel like you don't need it versus the deck because you're not trying to overset into the deck because of Gemini Spark. You're normally very conservative on how many cards you're setting. And besides the Heavy Storm, Mirror, Torrential, unless you kill an absolute 0 during not the damage step, you can't even Starlight Road an absolute 0 at that point. So I don't love it in the matchup, so I choose to bring it out. Okay, so this next one. This next one is for Herofrogs. This would include like a Dream Frog variant that is playing the hero package. Any sort of hero, frog, monarch variant. I know that's very popular right now. So this is effectively my side for that. So we're going to bring in the Sekitor. Sekitor is pretty good in those matchups. They tend to run minimal back row. If they do, it's maybe like Raigeki Break, like a Wing Blast, maybe like a random Torrential or something, maybe a one-off Mirror Force, but like they tend to be at maybe at most like 5 traps on their deck. That's like probably a lot though, and they all are usually chainable things that lets you you can get rid of to get back Treeborn. So there's a lot of openings for Sekitor in this matchup, especially into like a defense mode Dupe Frog that isn't in the middle of a dupe block. So I think you want to have Sekitor in your deck game 2 and 3. So again, I pull out the Yada for that. Smashing Ground. I think it's good enough to get over dupe block, to stop an Ab 0, to just quickly answer a big body. because the deck can usually put a few out depending on the variance. So I think it's just a solid card. Chariot, it's a very monster effect heavy deck that normally doesn't have high stats on the field unless they've used a monster effect on the way to get the high stat thing on the field. So Chariot is good against the deck. As we know, Chariot is just good against Frogs. This is also good against Frogs, Transmigration. Now, obviously, in this scenario, if it wasn't for the fact that they tend to have the hero package, then DD Crow would probably be better in this spot. But because they have Swap Frog and stuff, they can repitch Frogs that you send back to the deck. But the fact that a lot of them are playing Miracle Fusion package as well, and for the same reason, you could blow out the Miracle Fusion package by sending out like both the heroes in their graveyard or something. I think it's good enough. So I definitely like it. Compulse. I think you want third Compulse because they either tend to play Absolute Zero, they have like a lot of fusions, not fusions, synchros. So you just want to out that stuff. And pole position. This is probably the best matchup for pole position because of Econ, Brain Control, Soul Exchange. Just stopping all of those cards is clutch. Obviously, there's random other interactions you can have with it. I've had many points where my opponent tributes for a Caius and targets my back row, and it's a pole position, so I flip pole position and kill their guy. There's a lot of interesting stuff you can do with this card, but it's really to stop all the steel cards, because that turns off your War Chariot. They're going to prioritize trying to turn off your War Chariots. And then the last one that I wanted to show you guys is against Vayu Turbo. I felt like these were probably the 5 most important matchups to show you guys for GBs. So for Vayu Turbo, obviously this is where our Ancient Forests come in. This card's amazing versus the deck. I think most of you know this by now. It's like a Nobleman of Cross Out, but with all upsides added to it, and more flexible. Smashing Ground, I think it's just good into a deck that's going to summon a bunch of 2300s to just quickly get it off the field if you ever need to. Again, this is an oppression deck. It can be a skill drain deck. I think Twister's good. This is a heavy monster effect deck. Obviously, though, the Vayu effects get around Chariot, but the Rykos and all stuff like that, and the Greffers and the Armageddon Knights, like Dark Arm Dragon, like you want to have, I think you want your Chariots. You want your Chariots and you want your Ancient Forest to try to stop all that. As we know, Compulse is great into Vayu Turbo because it just outs their synchro. And this card is so clean into Vayu Turbo. Way better than DD Crow, in my opinion, because when they go to try to Vayu summon, and you go and chain this and send the cards back to the deck, they can't out that with a Burial. Normally, if they have Burial, they could potentially just do the same play again, and they completely undid your DD Crow. But this lets you very much ravish their graveyard and plays around Burial and Return from the Different Dimension. So I really love this card against them. For the same reason, they're a pretty heavy back row deck. I think they tend to unload their hand. I think this deck is more likely to turn 2 and turn 3 still have 4 cards in hand, maybe, depending on how they play, how many cards they decide to set, how conservative they are. But I still don't like the fact that this feels dead a lot of the time versus that deck, so I'm pulling it out. They're an oppression deck, so I pull out Call of the Haunted. We're pulling out Book of Moons. I don't think this card's this strong into this deck, and you're siding into a lot of different removal stuff that's better against this deck that I'd rather keep in the Book of Moons, or I'd rather side out the Book of Moons. I think like Shrink's better than Book of Moon against this deck. So I like to pull out the Book of Moons. I think a Shrink is better than Hedgeguard against this deck because they don't have hand traps, so I pull out the Hedgeguard. And I like to pull out one Tiger because they're an oppression deck. They have a lot of back rows, and I want to not be clumped with double Tigers. Again, the reason I don't pull out Tiger against Blackwings is because it can very much be an ace card versus Icarus attack. But against that are like really back row heavy, I do classically like to consider pulling out one tiger, just to not overly clump my hands and rely on a certain play. But yeah, so that's how I map out my sides. That's how I figure out that, everything in my side has a use for something. And as you can see across all those matchups, I did use every single card in my side, so it made it pretty easy to figure out like where to use these in other matchups. Yeah, I hope this video was helpful. And yeah, any other questions for me? Let me know. I I have an Edison 3v3 event coming up in October. I don't think I have anything else coming up. I don't think I'll be at Arbet New York. But yeah, anyways, let me know if you have questions. I hope everybody has a good day.